It began as a clear blue morning over New York City, a morning so ordinary that no one could have imagined it would become the darkest in American history. People went to work, kids were on their way to school, and the hum of the city filled the air. At 8:46 a.m., the first plane hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center. In an instant, the world stopped. Confusion filled the streets. People thought it was a tragic accident, a pilot error, a mechanical failure. No one was ready for what would come next. When the second plane slammed into the South Tower at 9:03 a.m., everything changed. The illusion of safety shattered. America was under attack. Smoke and fire poured from the towers as people below stared in disbelief, frozen between horror and fear. Within minutes, the world's most powerful nation had been thrown into chaos. Phones stopped working. News anchors choked up on live television. The skyline of New York, the symbol of American strength, was burning. Inside the towers, chaos turned to courage. Thousands were trapped on upper floors, choking on smoke and searching for a way out. Some made desperate calls to loved ones, whispering final words. Firefighters, police officers, and first responders rushed upward as everyone else came down. They climbed into the smoke, knowing they might never return. In those moments, heroes were born, ordinary men and women who chose duty over survival. By 9:37 a.m., a third plane struck the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. The heart of America's defense was burning. Inside the White House, confusion reigned. No one knew how many planes were in the sky or where they were headed. Air traffic controllers watched blips disappear from their radars. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed, a sound that echoed like thunder across Manhattan. A massive cloud of dust rolled through the streets, swallowing everything in its path. People ran, stumbled, fell, and prayed. 17 minutes later, the North Tower followed. It wasn't just a building collapsing, it was the collapse of certainty, of normal life. The streets turned gray with dust and debris. Survivors emerged like ghosts, their faces white, eyes red, searching for someone, anyone they knew. Hospitals overflowed, but there were too few to treat. Families gathered around televisions, dialing numbers that would never answer. America was in shock, paralyzed between disbelief and heartbreak. By noon, the air over lower Manhattan was thick with smoke. Fighter jets patrolled the skies. For the first time in modern history, the entire U.S. airspace was shut down. Thousands of planes were grounded. The world watched in silence. No one spoke. No one smiled, even miles away. People felt the same sinking fear. What if this wasn't over? At 10:03 a.m., a fourth plane, United Flight 93, went down in a Pennsylvania field. The passengers had heard about the other attacks. They knew what was coming. In one of the most heroic acts of that day, they fought back. Their struggle prevented another disaster, possibly saving the White House or the Capitol. In their final moments, they chose to fight. They became symbols of defiance in a day defined by tragedy. As the hours passed, the magnitude of what had happened began to sink in. The Twin Towers, icons of global trade and human achievement, were gone. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost. Families waited for news that would never come. Missing posters covered the city walls. The smell of smoke and burnt steel lingered for days. That night, America was silent. Cities across the nation held vigils. Strangers embraced. People gathered around candles, tears mixing with the flicker of light. The president spoke from the Oval Office, promising justice, unity, and resolve. But behind the words lay fear of an enemy unseen, of a future uncertain. In the following 24 hours, the world began to react. Airports were locked down, borders tightened, the stock markets froze. News outlets ran the same haunting footage over and over again. The towers collapsing, people running, sirens screaming. Everyone wanted to understand, who did this? Why? Then came the answer: Al-Qaeda, a name most Americans had never heard before. The man behind it, Osama bin Laden, was in Afghanistan, protected by the Taliban. Suddenly, the eyes of the world turned toward a country many couldn't find on a map. Within days, The phrase war on terror filled every screen, every conversation. America was wounded, but determined. In the hours and days that followed, something extraordinary happened. Amid the rubble, amid the pain, people came together. Firefighters dug through debris with their bare hands. Volunteers lined up to donate blood. Churches, mosques, and temples opened their doors. Flags appeared on every home, every window. The spirit of unity burned brighter than the flames that destroyed the towers. But behind that unity was anger, an anger that would soon shape the next 2 decades of history. The world's most powerful nation was preparing for a response unlike any before. As intelligence agencies connected the dots, Afghanistan emerged as the starting point, the place where terror had been trained, planned, and unleashed. By the next morning, America's grief had turned into resolve. The country that had been attacked was now ready to strike back. The U.S. military began planning the largest operation since World War II. The goal was clear: to dismantle Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, to find those responsible, and to ensure no one would ever dare attack the United States again. But history has a way of repeating itself. Many empires before had marched into Afghanistan with the same purpose, and few had ever left victorious. The British tried, the Soviets tried, both met the same fate. Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires, and America was about to learn why. Back in New York, rescue efforts continued. Firefighters and volunteers worked day and night under collapsed steel and concrete. Every siren, every shovel of debris carried a single hope that someone, somewhere, might still be alive. But as days passed, hope turned to heartbreak. The faces on missing posters became memorials. The world changed in those 24 hours. Airport security, intelligence gathering, foreign policy, everything was rewritten. Fear seeped into daily life. Yet, amid all that fear, there was courage. The stories of the firefighters, the passengers of Flight 93, the office workers who guided others to safety, they became symbols of what it meant to be human in the face of horror. In Washington, political leaders faced the impossible task of keeping a nation calm while preparing for war. Every American wanted answers, and they wanted justice. But justice in the 21st century would not come easily. In the following weeks, the smoke over Ground Zero continued to rise, like a scar on the skyline. America stood still, mourning and waiting. The sound of fighter jets overhead reminded everyone that life would never be the same again. Children grew up in a world where 9/11 wasn't just a date, it was a turning point. As the sun set over New York that first night, the city that never slept was wide awake. The sirens faded, but the cries remained. People prayed for peace, for strength, for meaning in a tragedy that made no sense. The first 24 hours after 9/11 were more than just a day in history. They were the beginning of a new world. A world shaped by fear, courage, and resolve. A world where every shadow held memory, and every flag carried sorrow. And in that silence, after the towers fell, as America wept and the world watched, one truth began to emerge. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of a story that would stretch across continents and decades. Because out there, beyond the rubble of New York, beyond the ashes of the Pentagon, beyond the crash site in Pennsylvania, lay a land that had already buried empires before. A land that would soon become the center of America's next chapter. A land called Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires.